Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is the Oneness Podcast. I am Jessica Del Mar. In this episode, we're going to be talking about October Ascension Energy. There's a lot of things coming up for October after going through September. September was big energy inwardly. So a lot of people dealing with a lot of inward emotional turmoil, especially grief. Grief was a big one in September. Another big thing in September was working with our survival mode. I have not yet put out the freeze mode podcast episode that I recorded at the beginning of September because I had a lot of work that I was doing internally in September. And usually, the timing of these episodes comes out exactly when they're supposed to. And sometimes when I'm sitting on an episode for a long period of time, even after I've recorded it, there's something there that is being worked on in between. But it's funny with the freeze mode episode that I did, and I'll put it out hopefully in my next episode, so look out for that. But because I was working so much in September with my own freeze mode, it was like an activation almost after that recording of the freeze mode, survival mode information, that it just kind of unraveled so much about my own internal survival freeze mode that I've been working on throughout the month of September. So now that sort of a lot of that is clearing, I'm excited to put out that survival mode podcast episode hopefully soon. But basically what's been happening for a lot of people is the clearing of these survival mode instincts that we've been surviving on, right? That we've been living through, that we've been perceiving our reality through. And although this has been something that we've been working on for quite some time, it feels like a new layer. Like always, there's always a new layer. A new layer is kind of being swept up. A new layer is being let go. A new layer is kind of being peeled back. And that's just how it goes, right? The ebbs and flows of life. Every time it's like taking a step back to do a lot of the inner reflection and inner integration and healing and whatever needs to be kind of cleaned up internally. Then we feel a movement and a push forward to receive however we're meant to expand and open and go outward into the universe, into the world. So October, what was coming through was some big energy for us to integrate again. The very first thing that came through as I was tapping into the energy of October is the words "be ready" came through. Be ready, gear up, have faith, no fear. And really what was coming through then following that is kind of like a readying of our spirit, especially when it comes to love, to prepare ourselves for whatever is going to come, I would say in the next few months. Fall has been coming through as sort of a big transition period. Essentially, it is a transitional season, but really a big transition as we head into winter, which might be something interesting, some big energy coming through in winter. But basically with October and fall, the fall season, the transition season, it's really like asking us to prepare, to get ready, to gear up, to have faith most importantly, and not to fear, especially whatever might be coming. And it has a lot to do with instilling more of this courageous sense of love, internal love, kind of like fine-tuning what that love is and where it's coming from internally, how strong it is for you. And I think a lot about October is going to be not testing, but showing us areas of our life where maybe the love that we hold might be false love or illusionary love or conditional love. And if we can face those parts of ourselves, then we know through an open perspective, through a conscious awareness, that if we're still holding this very conditional sense of love or illusionary love, false love, then how can we shift our perspective or shift our senses and awareness and our connection, our deeper inner connection to love, so that it becomes unconditional, so that it becomes graceful, so that it becomes compassionate and true. And so that shift is going to be a big part of this October. And so the message that came through for October is simply kind of an integration and activation of that shift, of that transition when it comes to love specifically. So in tuning to the energy of October, the vision that I was shown was early dawn. From where I was standing, it was still very dark. It was like I was standing like on a ranch somewhere in the mountains, and it was dark. The skies had that hazy, dark blue color. But in the horizon, I began to feel and see the sun of dawn slowly emerging from the night. And in that feeling, it felt like there was something on the horizon with the rising of that sun, awakening. It was more than just the sun rising. It was about an awakening of our awareness. And the message in that moment was that to go with this path, this emerging and awakening path, that rising sun path, is to find the direction of love internally. I think this feeds into the feeling that so many people feel a little bit lost at this moment, not really sure where their north is pointing, and maybe having their compass spinning around a little bit. And I think October is going to be another sort of like pivotal month where we ground a little bit more in the fine-tuning of what love means to us and the way that we hold love, because there's so much depth and strength that emerges from our internal love. And it's not just our perception of the world around us, but it's our action of how we go forth into the world and create and connect with others and get things moving and put things into action, get momentum going in a certain direction. And so I think that's really the importance of this month and how and where we find that. The other thing that came through is that October is unleashing our internal breath. So it showed me a vision of like the dragon's breath and how it's like powerful coming forth from the body. It's not just like a small, short breaths. It's like this huge emergence of energy internally that is being expelled externally. So dragon's breath. This is what came through. The tables have been divided into two paths, self-sovereignty and self-bondage. Whatever you have chosen cultivates a powerful connection to the problems and solutions that we are currently experiencing and going to experience in the world. There's a lot of change happening, making it easy for us to judge what is good and what is bad, which therefore also makes much of the world feel like a tug-of-war between the two sides of good and bad. Because of this upheaval, there is an internal calling within ourselves to focus not on good or bad, but rather to focus on love. So this is the other thing that was coming through in terms of us strengthening our internal connection to love, is because it's necessary for problem solution, or it's necessary more so in getting out of that problem solution karmic cycle and getting into love, right? So I'll talk more about that. When we feel our connection to all things, there is an inner innate sense of responsibility and inner empowerment that we must bring into our presence. It is our awareness that allows us to be in our wholeness enough to understand who we are. Our awareness is a powerful gift because it is our awareness that sets us free or keeps us in bondage. We want you to understand how powerful you are through your awareness. Awareness is not simply a tool for presence and consciousness. Awareness is a tool for change. When you are capable of looking at something with the lens of both compassion and non-judgment, you are capable of very powerful things, including the way that things change. So you know that when you focus on anything, you give energy to the subject of your awareness, right? And so what came through is that destiny, or what we think of as destiny, is not really set in stone, but is an outcome of your choices. You are powerful creator beings, and if you remember who you truly are, you will remember that your path was chosen long ago. And in that path is what humans call destiny. However, the human experience is about remembering or forgetting that path that was chosen long ago. And so the choices that you make as human beings all comes down to whether you are remembering who you are or not. It's interesting because when you remember who you are, you're feeling that internal connection, you're feeling harmonious with your spirit, you're feeling the callings, both internal and external, then you are more likely to fulfill what we as human beings call destiny, because our paths were chosen long ago. As human beings, it's about remembering that path and feeling into the path and aligning with all the things that we asked for, all the things that we put into that path that we wanted to experience. That's why we feel destiny. That's why we feel deja vu. That's why we feel synchronicities. That's why we feel the magic of the path, right? But when we forget who we are, I think there's still a sense of destiny to that. I think that there's still a sense of our chosen path to that. But what's coming through right now is that the guides are saying that it's all part of the path, whether you remember who you are or not. I think that's what makes the remembering so much more significant, because we've gone into, or we come from the not remembering. And so the path that we have chosen prior to being born a long time ago involves the dark and the light. It involves the wholeness. It's not just the great things that happen along our path, the synchronicities, the magic, the destiny, all those things. It's everything. It's even the exact opposite. Because I think in many ways, we could not have reached the point of the synchronicity or the destiny or the magic if not for experiencing the opposite. When you focus on love, you create an outcome different from the karmic cycle. So that kind of ties into everything as well, depending upon, I think the karmic cycle is a lot of where we are when we forget who we are. Meaning, often unconscious awareness of an outcome births more momentum in the direction of the outcome. So for example, when there's a war on drugs, it creates not necessarily a shift in the direction of where that's going, but it creates an amplification of it, right? Also in terms of poverty, there's not been a shift in poverty, but an amplification of it. So how do we change these types of things? That's the question, because I think in a lot of ways, there's been this sort of karmic cycle keeping things alive and keeping things and also amplifying things too through the awareness of it. Because awareness is so important, meaning what are you doing with your awareness? That's where responsibility comes in, a sense of responsibility to your awareness when you are conscious. When you are unconscious, then your awareness often creates more of what you're being aware of, right? But when you are conscious, your awareness of something offers you the opportunity for change. Through unconscious awareness, an amplification of these things occur, meaning the things that you are aware of through unconscious awareness, not by intention, but generated by default. Again, the war on drugs. Our awareness is on the war on drugs, but it somehow has created an amplification of it rather than a change of it. The knowledge of how to shift it was not yet integrated on a large scale, and that's where you get the karmic cycle. But now, through conscious awareness, the ability to shift out of this karmic cycle or out of karmic cycles in general is held in the lens of you. It is not a problem solution thing. It is a conscious, unconscious thing. That was really powerful. It's not a problem solution thing. It is a conscious, unconscious thing. So when we look at a problem, desiring a solution because of the problem, then in a lot of ways, we feed the problem. And that's where a lot of the problem solution, problem karmic cycle has come into play. Our problems are feeding solutions, but the solutions are feeding the problems. This is a hard thing to hear because humans want and need solutions to every problem that they set their sights on. So when there is a problem, we desire naturally a solution. So the solution is being created through the problem or because of the problem. We're not saying that you should not focus on the solution. You absolutely should focus on the solution. But what we are saying is that when you observe a problem, if you were to shift into the lens of compassion and non-judgment regarding the problem rather than judgment of the problem, then you are instantly going to connect to a solution without depending on the problem for the solution. So often, the solution from the source of the problem is something that pushes up against the problem. So there's always going to be a stark difference. There's always going to be black and white. There's always going to be two sides, problem and solution. And also so often what happens is that many people see a problem and they don't know what the solution can be to solve the problem. And so we want to remind you that there is a divine plan, and wherever your attention goes in your life is an indication of imminent change occurring on the horizon. Going back to my vision of October, imminent change occurring on the horizon. It's kind of feeling like an alarm that's saying, hey, it's time to wake up. And so it's like October feels like the alarm, but maybe we can still put the snooze button on something. But there's imminent change on the horizon, and it's time to really prepare ourselves and align our energy to receiving whatever that change is. And more importantly, being part of whatever that change is. This is why you can never force another person to see the world your way. They were never meant to. You were each meant to follow the strings of your own heart in order to take the journey that you created for yourself long ago. So again, going back to what I was saying, wherever your attention goes in your life is an indication of imminent change occurring in the horizon. That was a huge thing when I was bringing this information through, because we each really have to consider, where is our attention going at this time? Where are we being called to? What passions are being sparked within us? What do we see out in the world that pulls at our hearts, that pulls our focus into? Because that's going to be a huge indication in terms of where you need to fine-tune, refine, and focus your internal energy to help shift whatever you are putting your attention to, wherever your awareness is going to. And it's different for each person, right? Something that I'm being pulled to become aware of or focus on is going to be different from someone else who is being called to focus in a different direction or wherever their passions are leading them. So it's going to be different for every single person. When you look at a problem with compassion and non-judgment, you are immediately sensing how that problem is part of a greater whole. It is not separate. The need to change the problem is because we hold judgments of how the world should be. Again, the need to change a problem is because we hold judgments of how the world should be. So, how do things change when we then approach a problem with non-judgment and compassion, right? Things will start to really change in different directions once we start holding our problems in a different way. We are meant to live a life that reflects who we are. And when we witness something that we do not like, it immediately triggers something inside of us that says, this is not who you are. And so, in our attempt to change who we are not, we try to figure out something that aligns more with who we are. But what often happens is who we are not becomes the bigger issue than who we are, therefore keeping who we are not alive and well, and also therefore keeping the cycle of karma alive and well too. This goes back into that problem-solution problem karmic cycle. And so we have arrived at a time where you are stepping out of this karmic loop, but it requires that you shift into compassion and non-judgment. The solutions you are looking for is not found in the problem, but is found in something completely different. Introducing the energy that takes you out of the problem-solution problem karmic loop is a path of non-resistance to the problem and a way of calling in solutions not tied or attached to the problem. This is difficult to hear, even as Jessica receives this information. So as I was receiving this information, I was also questioning things, right? It's like, okay, so my question was, so for example, with this information, how can we find a solution to something that pulls on my heartstrings, which is factory farming or the abuse of animals, if not for the problem of factory farming and the abuse of animals? And what came through is the answer to that question is, why does factory farming exist as a problem? Why does the human mind find it to be wrong? The answer to those questions are, because you know that it does not express the true meaning of love. And so the problem is not the factory farming. The problem is the lack of love. And so to witness the cruel practice of factory farming or animal abuse, not as a problem, but as a reflection of the lack of love that humanity has, is what can immediately spark a sense of compassion and non-judgment if you are consciously plugged into the whole. The solution you are looking for is not about ending factory farming, but is about instilling more love into the hearts of humanity. When this happens, cruel practices such as factory farming will cease to exist. But also, all aspects of animal abuse will cease to exist as well. I said, well, that sounds like a big task. And what came through is, we say, it is not a big task. It is about where you put your conscious awareness into your passions. Your conscious awareness of the lack of love in factory farming is what will change the direction of it in the future. Your conscious awareness of love in the hearts of animals all over the world is what will change how they are cared for and looked over in the future. You may not have the resources to do anything to change its grand nature on a physical level, but the greatest resource you all have is the source that comes from within you. Do not underestimate the power of your conscious decisions. Your intentions to cultivate more love is what will change all that exists in lack of love. So how do you change the problem? You focus not on the problem, but the love within the whole. You see, the problem is necessary for you to understand where it's trying to take you within the navigation of the whole. Without the problem, you would not simultaneously connect with the love needed to resolve it. The solution exists not in the problem, but in the greater whole. So when you can consciously focus on bringing more love into awareness from the greater whole, you bring more opportunity for a solution to be crafted from pure thought and insight alone. This brings us back to the purity of creation from a source of pure thought, rather than default manifestations of karmic entitlement engorged within itself. Make space for love to rise, not because you're focusing on the fear, but because you are allowing love to be what you know it to be. And that's what came through for this October Ascension Energy update. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to read the written transmission that came through for this podcast episode, head on over to my newsletter. I'll post the link to it in the description of this episode. You can sign up to become a subscriber and receive all of the written transmissions to all of the podcast episodes straight to your inbox. Thank you again for being here. I'll see you in the next episode. Oneness, love, and peace be with you.